Well, good morning, everybody. So excited to have you on with our Red Ink Revival leadership event around the 7 surprising expert insights. I'm so glad you guys are joining us. I will wait just a few minutes for a few others to pop on. So glad to have so many of our pastor colleagues, as well as a lot of our church members and church attenders and friends from all around the country, church staffs. We are so again excited to have you all with us today. We're again going to be talking about 7 surprising expert insights, psychological money motivations, and how to lead their transformations. If you guys stay on to the end, we'll have a special offer for you. I'm excited to share with you some opportunities. Also want to let you know about our podcast. If you haven't already, check out our Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. You can look for it on anywhere you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. Also, check out our website. You can find our podcast there at our website, as well as our blog post and a growing amount of content. It's an amazing podcast that we have. And again, we have interviews with experts. We have interviews with therapists and pastors, as well as influencers in the business sector. So cool, guys. So amazing. Our administrative assistant, Camille, is on. And so if you have any questions or comments, be sure to put them in the chat. If you're new to Zoom, you can jump on your chat area of the Zoom platform and type in a question. You can make it for everyone, or you can make it specific to Camille, but Camille is the one who is helping us with all the back end stuff, and it's just going to be absolutely an amazing day. So again, just so glad that you're on and a part of the podcast today. We are going to launch in just a moment. Again, there's a few people still popping on. We're mindful of that. But we are talking about the 7 surprising expert insights, psychological money motivations, and how to lead their transformation. We'll have a conversation with Dr. Todd Bowman. Dr. Bowman is just an amazing friend. He's a psychologist and neuroscientist. I'll tell more about him in just a minute. But he and I will go after this, and I believe that you're going to see some really cool insights to how you function and why you do what you do around money. And you're going to find that there is a much deeper root system than just money randomness or what people do with their money kind of on a instinct level. There's something below the surface, something driving it. So we're excited about that. Well, let's jump onto it. I'm going to unmute and open up the video for Dr. Bowman. I'm going to let him hop on. There he is, the man, the legend, all of those things. So Dr. Bowman, go ahead and speak and make sure that I can hear you.
Good morning, everybody. I've got this belief that the crazier my hair gets, more and more people are going to join the Red Ink Revival to see what happens with it and when it actually gets cut. So it's kind of the star of the show here today.
Well, I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I noticed that, Dr. Bowman. All right, guys, let's jump in. Man, I'm excited about this. Todd, are you excited to get to spend a few minutes with everybody just sharing some of the insights that you've gained over some years of research and study?
Oh, I am. It's so exciting to be here once again doing this. And I think there's really good things in store as far as just inviting the Holy Spirit to till the soil of our pasts and our stories. And I just trust and pray that good revelations, good insights, and good movement forward is going to come out of today.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, let me set it all up. Dr. Bowman is a psychologist and neuroscientist. He is an associate professor of counseling at Indiana Wesleyan University. He's an adjunct professor at Nazarene Theological Seminary. He also is an adjunct professor around Intro to Psychology at Nazarene Bible College. He has created the only sexual addiction accredited course that is recognized by the government in universities, which puts him in a level of expertise that few have. And he is a massive, as you could just hear in his heart, he's a massive Jesus lover. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with Dr. Bowman. My background, for anybody who doesn't know who I am, which probably many, my name is Patrick Norris, and I am a pastor of over 35 years, senior leader. And I also have accreditation, I have certification, that is, with as a professional in the area of trauma and addiction. And so when I've learned some of the things that I've learned about why driven people do what they do, I just am so compassionate and passionate to help people grow and learn. And so we're going to dive into that again, 7 surprising expert insights, psychological money motivations, and how to lead their transformation. I want to say right out of the gate, we know, man, there is some massive financial things happening in the world right now. There are a lot of insecurities, uncertainties, even when it comes to when are we going to get back to the world that we once knew. Nobody can definitely tell you when or how. As a pastor, that creates a whole new way of thinking about what is happening in the heart, the mind, the brain of the people that I get to lead. If you're a pastor, you resonate with that pretty deeply. If you are a church attender or on church staffs, you equally are being faced with not only your own profile economically and financially, but you're looking at everybody that you're dealing with, your friends, the people that you may lead, people that you have a network of connection with. And so today we're going to pull that stuff apart, not for the sake of just trivia or to look at and be like, oh, wow, that's cool. We want to give you an equipping so that you can see what's driven you over a lifetime and the transformation so that you begin to live a new wholehearted life around a relationship with finances. And then separately, we want you to have an equipping to be able to touch the lives of the people that you are networked with. So this is just going to be an absolutely amazing, amazing day. I want to begin with the scripture that Jesus says, where your treasure is, there will be your heart also. Wherever your treasure is, there will be your heart also. I can say that when I first began hearing this text, it was always put in a one-dimensional interpretation of how loyal you are to God is based on what you do with your money. And so it was really about a challenge to get people within the Christian community to rise up to say, wherever your treasure goes, your heart's going to follow it. And so we want to make sure that you put your treasure in the right places, that you tithe, that you give offerings, you seek first the kingdom of God. Now, what I'm about to say doesn't change that interpretation. And yet at the same time, well, what if this text had a much broader perspective to it? What if when Jesus is saying where your treasure is, there will your heart be also? What if he's actually saying that you can get microscopic insights to what is driving everything in your life if you just follow the money trail? You see, our money talks. If our money actually had vocalized language, I wonder what it would tell us about what has happened at a heart level. Now, when we talk about the heart, we have to understand that the heart is actually the epicenter of all human behavior. The scripture says in Proverbs that we are to guard our heart with all diligence because out of it comes the issues of life. So everything about life begins in this place called the heart. In Matthew chapter 15, Jesus says this, he says, the things which proceed out of the mouth, they come from the heart, they defile a man. So the heart is where defiling actually happens. So everything is about a heart epicenter of behavior. It all becomes a part of this root system down in our heart. One verse later, Jesus says, out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, and so on. The reason that we keep pulling that up is, again, Jesus, as we began with, says that where your treasure is, there will be your heart also, wherever your treasure is. So what if Jesus wasn't trying to just throw us into a big focus challenge that we're going to always give our treasure first and believe that our heart will follow the treasure. What if he was saying, actually, the relationship goes both ways? It's mutual. If you look at the money trail, if you look at the financial side of how you express your personality, you're going to begin to see a pattern, a theme, a root system as to why you do what you do in life. And so again, finances are connected all the way down to a heart level. That then brings us to this verse. And I just want to set up a few texts for you to give you this aha, this kind of, wow, I never knew that. I never saw that. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, he says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. We'll just stop there for a moment. The love of money. Love is always a relational term. He's talking about the way we relate to money has a root system. Think about it that way. The way we relate to money individually has a root system. How you relate to money has a root system. How I relate to money has a root system. And it causes such implications in our life that many people have strayed from the faith on the basis of what money is actually expressing, or money is showing us about the person, that ultimately pierces them over and over with sorrows. When you think about this whole root system concept, that money has a root system, there is another text that I quickly want to show you, and that's from Hebrews. In Hebrews chapter 12, you'll see it on the screen. It says, pursue peace with everybody, looking carefully lest anybody fall the grace of God, fall short of it. Lest any root, so we're right back to roots, any root of bitterness spring up and cause trouble, and many become defiled. I just think that's an interesting text. I always thought the root of bitterness was that you were unforgiving. I thought that that was the essence of it. But in all of my trauma training, I began to realize what he's talking about is that throughout life, we have injuries. Those injuries create for us these pockets of energy around the happenings with what other people have done to us, how we have been impacted by the fallen world and Adam and Eve's sin. We've inherited their sin and death. And then finally, things that we've chosen, and they have created for us these different bitter moments, these kind of traumatic loss, grief experiences. Those energy pockets that are inside of us on a neurobiological level, they're in our brain, when you least expect it, when you think you've disciplined, you've been transformed, you think everything is smooth sailing, that stuff will spring up and shock you. It'll surprise you, and it troubles you. There's a rumination going on. It's an annoyance. There's a disturbance as it springs up in surprise. And then he says that many become defiled. And the word defiled is much like a modern day concept of a tattoo. It's to dye with a color, to stain. It's a polluting or a contaminant. And this is actually instructing or compelling so much of the reason we do the things that we do. So in our Facebook Live that we did 1 week ago on Tuesday, Dr. Bowman and I shared our stories. And so I'm going to bounce it to you, Dr. Bowman. And if you want to just share a quick overview of what happened to you as a child, and then how maybe that begins to play out today from that bitter root in the expressions of your relationship with money.
Yeah, sure thing. Be happy to. If you've had a chance to tune in last week, or if you were able to listen to the sermon dialogue that Patrick and I had a couple weeks ago, you might know or be familiar with a few pieces of my story. Really grew up in a space of poverty in a small farming community, moved to the suburbs, and kind of life changed there, recognition around the haves and the have-nots. Everything from scrounging for loose change with my brother to struggling with stealing things from, probably 7 or 8 years old all the way into my teenage years, specifically from family. So not stealing from stores necessarily, but that was too risky, but stealing from kind of these low risk spaces. To even finding money and the intensity and the power that finding money has had in my life that I'll get to here in just a second. So kind of growing up in poverty, and kind of this financial flashpoint moment was on a Friday afternoon when my uncle came home and gave me $100 bill. And it was accidentally the wrong bill. He meant to give me a $1 bill. But I had this really kind of joyous, I would call it like ecstasy, transcendent moment where all of my desires were finally going to be met. I had worth as a person because I had this experience financially, and it had learned early on that, when someone shows their affection, it tends to come through money. That would be a result of my grandparents on my mom's side, who were more of means. And Christmases, we'd always anticipate going to their house more. They were able to fulfill the purchasing things off our Christmas lists differently than my dad's parents. And there's kind of a history of alcoholism and addiction and just a host of things on that side that kind of speak this generational narrative of poverty mindset and scarcity. So just all these kind of shaping influences catalyzed in this one moment where my worth is dependent on the receiving of this $100 bill unsolicited. Nothing I had done, no antecedent moment had qualified me for the giving of this gift. And then within about 45 seconds, my uncle stopping me and apologizing. "I'm sorry, buddy, I pulled from the wrong side of my wallet." And he takes back the $100 bill and he gives me a $1 bill. And then just the depletion and the despair, the rejection, this kind of confirmation bias around, I knew I didn't really have any worth anyway. And now this kind of peripheral belief system that I carried all of a sudden had a landing space. There was a barren spot for that seed to fall in. And it really took deep root in my life, this idea of worth being tied to finances. From that moment, Patrick, I've really kind of had to explore these stories and kind of the impact of these stories, not just emotionally. We're talking about these emotional flashpoints tied to our life experiences with money. For instance, a few years back, we were selling our house and moving. And it was before we put the house on the market, we were doing all those kind of nitty gritty things that you have to do to make it look nice. And my wife wanted to go to the store. So I was not too happy about it. I think the Oklahoma State Cowboys were playing a big football game that day. And it was the year they, I think, lost one. They went 12-1. And if they hadn't missed a field goal in Ames, Iowa, they would have gone and gotten destroyed by Alabama in the national championship game. So I can remember it clearly, right? Like, because of what happens next, we end up going to the store. I'm in a sour mood. It's a little bit rainy, so I've got my 2-year-old in one hand. I'm holding my 4-year-old by the other hand. I wanted to get as close as I could to the front door to Home Depot. And we're walking in, and it's raining on us, and my 4-year-old is splashing in the puddles and getting me soaking wet. My wife is probably like 10 yards in front of me because she's just done with my attitude at the time. And I see her step over something in the atrium, and I'm, again, behind her, and I get up to it, and it's a $10 bill, kind of smiling up at me. I'm pretty sure the heavens parted, like a light shone down through the window onto the floor, Patrick. Angels were probably singing in my recollection of the moment, or like, at least in my body, that's what was happening. There was this significant shift from one of being in despair or disgruntled or upset to all of a sudden, everything was going to be okay. So we go and we get the few items that my wife needed. I think it was traps for ants and a flower. And I'm buying kids candy and like splashing in the rain puddles with them on the way back to the car. And I wish I could say that's where the story ended, that I had such great reflection and recognition of this moment. But the real powerful thing for the story happens about 5 months later, when we're finally getting ready to put the house on the market. It's a busy spring day, the first really nice day of April, probably 2013. And we go to the Home Depot. I have not been to the Home Depot since. I didn't go through the winter season. And everybody and their mother is there, Patrick. I mean, they've got part of the parking lot shut down because of the mulch troughs being open, and it's nice. So apparently every guy in Southern Johnson County had a honey-do list he was working on. So what happens? Well, because the parking lot's full, I found myself having to park in a really similar place in the parking lot. And I don't do crowds very well. So like, I'm not on a, crusade to get to New York City at any point in my life. I might go once with my wife because she wants to go for the holidays, but like I don't do crowds, and it was so packed and so crowded. So here we are parked in a similar spot. I'm in a similar mood state, and we're walking in a similar door. And again, my wife walking just this time a few steps ahead of me. I didn't disrupt her day as much this day as I did the previous in the story. But I find myself, I got, again, holding my son Graham in my arm, and I've got Ethan, my oldest, holding my hand, and we're walking in, and I find myself like scanning the floor, and I'm looking under stuff, and I'm checking stuff out, and got about 10 steps, and I just stopped in my tracks, and I thought, oh my goodness. Like the intensity of finding that $10 bill is overriding my conscious processing. Like I am stuck back in that moment, and the power, not just of the finding the $10, but in these moments of not having money, in these moments of finding money at a park, finding money at an amusement park, finding money in my brother's kind of stack of Sports Illustrated. He got money for Christmas. The $10 check that I tore up that my great grandmother sent my brother for his birthday that was thrown in my closet, and a lot of shame tied to that. All these financial flashpoints kind of flooded me, and I was frozen there, living out this identical narrative, knowing full well as a doctoral level neuroscience studying human being that loves Jesus, like there wasn't going to be $10 that appeared on the floor. Like it was such a random occurrence the first time. But it was this convergence point for all these parts of my story. And I had to stop and recognize, oh man, like there's wounds here. There is some deep wounds here. And I think it gets back to that $100 bill experience, where my experience of worth, my kind of declaration of self-worth, was tied around, see, this good thing is taken away. And to be honest, man, I struggled for years with the fear of something good being taken away. My wife dying, right? Like I had this terrifying fear, so I didn't bond with her probably as closely as she deserved. Same thing with my kids, that just that one moment had so much more impact than just on my financial understanding. It really was a relational wound. It was a relational wound from a family experience. It's a relational wound that edified and made real all these fears I had about myself. And then it's a relational wound that got carried forward into all these really important relationships in my life, including relationship with God, relationship with my wife, and relationship with my kids. So when you talk about a root system and the potential for bitterness being there, it's absolutely true. And I think we oftentimes carry those experiences and those stories more in our bodies than we do in our minds. And then there's these flashpoints, these moments that we accidentally stumble across, and we're confused around what just got awakened in me. I didn't realize that this thing was down there. Well, it's because it's down in the roots, and we're not thinking about the roots in our life. And that's what we're here to talk about today.
Well, when we talk about those roots, when we talk about what is being carried in our body, I just want for a second to differentiate this nebulous generality of what many people assume psychology is about. It's just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it, if it fits or not, it sticks. But what you're talking about when you're saying roots, and what I'm talking about when I'm saying roots, and when you're talking about carrying something in your body, we're talking about something that is objectively a part of the brain's processing. So those events that happen to you actually have a brain neural pathway that developed and then was further galvanized through reinforcement experiences. Yeah. And that's why you have these flashpoint instinctive reactions to it. Can you talk some about what happens in the brain when there are relational injuries, and why we find ourselves doing like Paul said, when I want to do what's right, I can't seem to execute? Or let's say it in this context, when I go to Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University and I learn how to budget and then I can't seem to do it, there's a root. So talk to the brain science around that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of that Romans 7 principle that you're alluding to there of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? Like, I don't know why I do the things that I do. The good I want to do, I can't do. The evil I don't want to do, I keep doing. I tie that back to it's kind of trauma oriented language, not exclusively, but when I say that, what I mean is when we think about trauma, trauma is really doing the same thing over and over toward this attempted solution. I think we kind of get off with that. Albert Einstein once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That might be true in a scientific laboratory, in the realm of physics or quantum physics or anywhere else. But in the realm of kind of neurophysiology and human emotions and human relationships, oftentimes this doing the same thing over and over, even though it's not yielding the desired outcome, really is an indicator of trauma. We can soften that if you want a bit, because I think we think of trauma around natural disasters, around intense boundary violations, a
War.
sense of horror or helplessness, but really
Yeah.
we're talking about intensity. So when I'm talking about trauma in a, I don't know, interpersonal realm, in a financial realm, really we're talking about these really intense experiences. Why that's important is because how God designed our neurobiology is to create these neural pathways that typically are forged when we have something intense that happens, something that happens at a very young age or very early in our story, and something that's reinforced frequently over time. Now, think about our home environment for most of us is the place where it's the first memories that we have. It's the most intense memories that we have. And we spend a lot of time in that family of origin environment. So messages about a number of things, spirituality, sexuality, food, entertainment, and yes, money all exists from an early age. We've got neurons that are wiring specifically in our emotional relational brain, kind of the limbic system. Why does that all matter, Todd? Well, that limbic system is where we carry these flashpoint financial experiences. There's a lot of emotion tied to them, and our brain kind of cues up the images or the kind of videotape in our memory centers when we feel those big emotions, just like when I found that $10 bill. Well, there's another part of the brain that we've got to make sense of. It's called the striatum. It's right above the limbic system, the emotional center. And it's where all of our relational reflexes are carried. So Patrick, when you were talking about the heart earlier, I would say the heart from a neurological perspective, that there's an adjunctive physiological truth next to the spiritual reality that you're talking about. I would say that convergence point neurologically is this emotional center, our relational reflexes that kind of are right above that, and then our orbital frontal cortex, kind of this mind of Christ language that Paul uses in his writings to the different churches. That when he's talking about the mind of Christ, that there's this kind of executive function, this kind of governing dynamic wherein the seat of spirituality exists, the seat of morality exists, of self-awareness, of compassion, of empathy. It's really beautiful. He uses different language like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, right? Like it's the fruit of the spirit. It's just more psychological, neurological language, but he nails it beautifully. So when we're thinking about kind of these moments of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, we're talking about an experience that is probably pretty early. It's something that was reinforced often, and it has just great power. And that's the place where we get stuck. It's why I was stealing from a young age. There was a lot of power in that, and I got stuck in that. And there was a lot of shame with that. But there was a function that was being served too. And the function was like I'm trying to escape the narrative of poverty and scarcity that in my life was very real. It wasn't a made up mindset. It was a very legitimate mindset. So that doing of things over and over and expecting different results, the doing the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University, but behavior doesn't change. It just means that there's an emotional intensity or a driver down in the soil, down in the root system that we have to get down to if we expect that the fruit that the tree is bearing to change it all.
What's interesting is it's not just about money either. That
Right.
money is just a microscope to see one vantage point of the same architecture of how we have become who we are in personality. The things we long for, the things we chase, the things that we escape, the things that shut us down. All of that the same way that we relate to money is the same way we relate to the ambitions of our calling and our assignment, our vision. It's the same way we approach our most intimate relationships with our wife or our kids. It's the same way that we express everything about who we are, which to me is absolutely fascinating. So when you learn why you do what you do from a financial perspective, it actually gives you insight as to who you are and why you do everything you do. And it's not just this kind of mysterious category of who I am, it's actually this scientific, objective insight to what actually happened that brought me to where I'm at. And I love knowing that. Well, today, our entire topic is 7 surprising expert insights. And so, what we're doing is we are leading people into some of the different personality styles that we might have. So, in the next few minutes, if we could, Dr. Bowman, I'm going to show the screen that is the different financial expressions, and then we'll wind up on 7 personality styles related to money. So if you would walk us through these financial expressions and what it actually would mean to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of to do these really quickly, and I think there'll be opportunities down the road to delve into these a bit more intentionally, maybe in your own soil or your own story. Impulsive buying would be about, really just not being able to stop oneself. It's going to operate outside of conscious awareness. So think about the impulse buy aisle wherever you shop, Price Chopper or Kroger or Walmart or Target, or they all leverage this thing of like, some people are going to impulse buy. You don't really need that thing for your kid, but they ask and you buy it. You don't really need the pack of gum, but it's discounted, so you buy it. So it's this inability to govern one's kind of expenses or behavior around purchasing things. Inordinate generosity is going to be more around really giving too much of yourself away. It's not just being generous or giving sacrificially. It's really this attempt at using money as a way to generate value for yourself, to generate appreciation from someone else, or to have worth or standing in their eyes. Financial avoidance is just really a disengagement from things pertaining to money. If money has been stressful, if money was something thought about in your house, like I remember growing up, you knew when the bills were due, because like my parents would both get like really stern looking faces and sit down at the kitchen table, and like all the kids would disappear, right? Like the 3 of us would either go to our room or go outside, or like we just avoided the understanding of what needs to happen. Here's a fiscal responsibility that you can do as a couple. But there was a contentiousness where, for me, there was a root of financial avoidance even for a long time early in my marriage, where I just want to put money in the bank and spend it and not calculate it, not balance the checkbook, because there was some relational flashpoints there. So kind of disengaging from the responsibility of money is financial avoidance. Financial enmeshment.
Before you go any further, I want to jump in. I remember us having a conversation with a pastor who, great man, great friend, etc. He, in advance of a master class that we were doing, he says that he and his wife never fight about money. They just never fight about money. And would the master class really help him? And I said, absolutely. First is for your individual, self, but then for who you are as a leader, leading others. And so he came to the master class, he and his wife together. And at the master class, he says he had this aha moment, because it's interactive. He had this aha moment, and he said, I just realized the reason we don't fight about money is because when my wife brings it up, I shut down. And which is financial avoidance.
Absolutely.
And that began to give him a window to a lot of transformation in his life. He's grown up a Christian. He's been a pastor for years and years. This has given him a window to open the different themes or patterns in his architecture that actually helps him live a whole different quality of life. So continue on with financial enmeshment.
Yeah. So financial enmeshment can be one of 2 things. It could be being on the receiving end of that, kind of fostering a sense of dependence and using someone else for money that is caretaking for you. Could be wealthy grandparents, could be parents, but kind of there's aversion to the responsibility of life and staying connected to someone because they're doing the caretaking. Or it could be flipped. It could be someone of means who's desiring to retain those relationships. For instance, a belief underneath that might be, if I don't let my kids live in the basement, they'll never be successful, even though they're 31, right? If I don't give my kids X number of dollars a month when they're teenagers, they won't love or respect me, right? So kind of these things that are culturally normative anymore, but have their root in trying to retain connection and relationship by way of utilizing money, or suggesting that if you give me money, I'll stay in this relationship with you. So it can kind of be one of two roles when we look at financial enmeshment: either the provider of those resources because of a fear, or kind of the use of another and kind of being enmeshed from the bottom up instead of the top down, if you will. Financial denial, this would be kind of, to use that language you just introduced, Patrick, from Romans 7, kicking the can down the road, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, feeling like there's going to be some windfall that resolves all of the financial burdens or responsibilities. So really a blatant rejection of my fiscal reality is not going to change, but I'm going to live as though it's somehow going to change. It's not going to change unless I do something productive, but it's persisting in those patterns, denying the reality that one might be faced with. Monetized rage. This is really about kind of making self big. It can be about amping up. Really, it's about kind of using money rather than physical violence or emotional violence. Really, it's about using money to coerce things and to generate an outcome. It could be taking advantage of someone financially. It could be in the context of an employer, not giving someone a raise, firing someone, hoping that kind of they'll fall destitute because they disagreed with the project, because they pushed back against your authority. So in the church, as a pastor, it could be using money that's designated for something else, and then using the authority of that pastoral role to justify such a decision. But again, really at the root, it's about controlling the outcome or controlling the attitudes, decisions, behaviors of other people.
And let me just say that behavior is not the focal point. That's just a step into the right direction of curiosity. What happened to a person to make them have that level of monetized rage? That's what we're actually asking. Hey, while we're on this, all of you guys who are on the webinar, I want to remind you that if you hang on to the end, we've got a special offer for you. There's a couple of things I want to share with you that you can begin to dig into your own story on. But also right now, if you would, as Dr. Bowman goes through this list, you see it on the screen. As you see these, type in the chat box, if you'd be so vulnerable, and just say, this is the one I struggle with. And which one is it? Which one do you find yourself having a struggle with? If you'd be willing to offer that, that'd be just fun for us to see. And the truth is, all of us have something. Unless you're the Messiah, you've got issues. And so I want to encourage you to normalize it so you can be curious about it without criticism and self-judgment or shaming. Back to you, Dr. Todd.
Patrick, that's a great point. That sometimes these styles or these expressions rather aren't even things that we notice in the day-to-day, but rather they're things that show up in times of financial distress, in times of emotional exhaustion, kind of when we're at our weakest points might be when these expressions manifest themselves. So we might not even be looking for something, back to the roots analogy, something that's above the soil. Sometimes it takes kind of a level of exhaustion, of emotional flare-up, of intense distress, kind of like we've found ourselves in with this COVID-19 pandemic situation. It's in those moments that we might see these expressions, and not when everything is peachy keen and things are going well and life is going fine and there's no major stressors that you're confronting. So we're not trying to say that these expressions are typified in you, but rather that we all have down in the soil these wounds that lead to these maladaptive expressions that, if they go unchecked, can kind of create styles that we're trying to navigate that really work against us instead of working for us.
So
Uh,
good. Dr.
so,
Bowman,
yeah,
Dr. Bowman, we've got about 5 minutes before we're going to hit our Q&A.
okay,
So as we go through the expressions, we might want to speed that up a little bit. And
yep,
then the personality styles, I want to end with that.
yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So the styles are going to be blends of these. So let me work through these in about 2 minutes, and then we'll talk about these blends and kind of transition there. Compulsive buying is a lot like impulsive buying. It just means that you're aware of it. Impulsive is unaware. Compulsive, you're aware of it, but you can't stop. Greed is really about filling oneself, filling a deficit or filling a perceived hole within one's self. So trying to compensate for a lack and filling that with lots of things. Financial enabling. This would be trying to keep someone from having to be independent. So it's really rooted in a low perspective of the other, or that they may be a bit coercive or manipulative, and you give in to that. So this would be someone who's convinced you that they can't be financially dependent, and you kind of just continue to rescue them, you bail them out. A lot of times we see this with people who are under earning, and the grandparents justify giving their kids money for their kids, for the grandkids. But there's this kind of aversion to responsibility or independence in the receiver. Financial infidelity is about financial secrets. So this would be hiding expenses or purchases. Could be making decisions, losing a bunch of money, independently, if there's an agreement about how much to spend or what the money plan is in a relationship, doing something different than that. So again, that can happen at the church level with how money is spent, or in a marriage, in a business, a number of places. But it's about secrets and a lack of integrity with kind of what's being spent and violating the agreements in a relationship. Financial risk aversion. This is really a lot of scarcity rooted mentality. An unwillingness to step out, an unwillingness to take risk. I think that in the parable of the talents, the gentleman that receives the one talent typifies this pretty well. I'm just going to bury this and not take the risk because I'm afraid. So that scarcity mentality is tied to fear. Financial exploitation. This is really kind of taking advantage of someone. And again, it could be because you have money that you're taking advantage of someone, or con artists would fall into this as well, kind of manipulating other people in an effort to obtain money. The Bernie Madoff scale is probably what you could call this, that there's a really unique type of exploitation. Hoarding is about just having a lot of stuff, and kind of the absence of boundaries is how I would define this idea of hoarding, that we cling to things and we hold on to things, and they just build up. But that there's this inability to let go that again is rooted in a unique type of fear. And then lastly, prosperity guilt would be this idea of feeling unworthy, feeling like even though you've worked hard for things, that you've been blessed, maybe with unmerited favor, made wise decisions, sought out wise counsel. But on the back end of that, feeling like you've been diligent, you've been faithful, you've worked hard, but you're undeserving. So it really kind of taps into this sense of an underlying sense of low self-worth or low deservedness for everything that you've achieved or been blessed with.
So all of those fit, as you described it, into some of these personality styles. And when we talk about a financial personality style, many people have the idea your personality is hardwired. What we suggest to you is that there can be some divine programming inside of us, but most of our personality got formed by the way we interacted or developed interpersonal exchanges with our family of origin, all the way to who we are today with all the relationships that came through our lives, and how we have survived and tried to strive for a sense of belonging. And then finally, we tried to learn from each one of those so that we can better be in a, what we hope would be security of relationship and intimacy. So personalities are actually something that, some people say, I just want people to accept me the way I am. Well, my empathy will love you the way you are, but my compassion won't allow you to be the way you are tomorrow. So we're going to keep loving you, but we're going to challenge you to grow. So talk just real quick about these 7 personality styles so that we can set up what we will have an exclusive offer, how we can help some people take steps in their own personality profiles.
Yeah, happy to. First, let me say that I would suggest to each of us that we have a primary and a secondary of each of these. So in our points of woundedness, we're probably going to have, and you think about like dominant hand and non-dominant hand might be another way of looking at this. When I broke my hand playing football in high school, I had to write with my left hand. I could do my assignments. It just didn't look as legible. So there's a primary style and a secondary style, if you want to think of that in this way. And again, these styles tend to show up more in these points of distress, points of exhaustion, points of high emotionality for us. And yet, just because we have these styles doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to be governed by them. I think that's part of why we started, Patrick, where we started with the idea of how understanding Scripture can reorient us and recalibrate us and foster this transformation so that we're not stuck living into these distortions and these financial styles that our time here in a fallen world is going to work into us. We're not stuck, but we can learn a lot about A, who we are, but B, the kind of points of healing that we need, not just financially, but relationally and emotionally by tuning into these personality styles. If you kind of peeled back the layers of my life that I've shared with you, and I didn't talk about being homeless twice, there's another layer to the stories that I'm sure we'll get into as we move forward with continued trainings. But you'd really find a really avoidant or disengaged style paired with a shame-based spirituality style. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of kind of financial risk aversion and prosperity guilt in my family and kind of the soil that my financial story emerges from, paired with a kind of just don't think about money. It's financial denial, it's financial avoidance. So kind of kicking the can down the road a bit and burying your head in the sand and not wanting to worry about it. So kind of these expressions show up as these styles, and we kind of have a blend. I think about Zacchaeus scripturally, the idea of being a really exploitative personality style and a possessive and amassing personality style. So I think all of our stories, to include people in Scripture, we can see that there's kind of a primary and a secondary style that can get activated in our personal narratives that really speak to the unique wounds that we carry and are an invitation for us to delve into this healing process, kind of starting with money, but as Patrick mentioned, it extends to all other parts of our life and relationships. So this addictive or mood-altering style is going to be a combination of impulsive and compulsive buying. It's really about a lack of good internal boundaries and an escape. It's kind of an escape of reality, kind of consciously or unconsciously trying to modify one's experience and kind of move from an undesired state to a preferred lack of reality, right? It's a distortion. It's an escape from the reality that we might find ourselves in.
This is where somebody who has financial fantasy would fit, where they get the Nigerian prince who offers, and this is what would suck somebody into that, or some of the multi-level marketing kind of concepts. It's to make a lot of money quickly to make up for past losses, which within Christianity, I'm one who has a doctrinal framework that in redemption, that God is my ultimate and unlimited resourcer for life. And because of that, I have the ability to believe that God wants to do exceeding abundantly above all I could ask or think. Well, before long, people in their wounding can take that biblical reality and then live in a fantasy world about their future prosperity and never address the wound. So I do think within Christian circles, you have people like your background that you had prosperity guilt, and then you have people on the extreme other side who have prosperity fantasy, financial fantasy that, in both sides of it, there's some truth there is a necessity to look at the root system to see why it's there. So I love how this stuff surfaces practical things for all of us. Because a lot of marriages, they struggle because one of the partners might have an extreme on any one of these seven, and the other partner's just trying to figure out, how do I navigate this? So
and most importantly in that, Patrick, those styles, if they're discrepant, are going to be intensified in times of distress. And then it's going to feel like, I don't even know you. Why are you doing this financially and emotionally? Why are you doing this? And there's even more conflict that's bred out of the lack of personal awareness around these styles that are rooted in our wounds.
So let's bring that back to right now during a global pandemic when so many people are laid off, distress has increased in a multiplied level. So pastors, right now, your people are going to be, the people that you're privileged to lead are going to be dealing with a lot of these distress moments, and the flashpoints are going to come alive. And the equipping that you can have around this is going to serve you incredibly, incredibly well. Well, Todd, we have pretty much, we've come to the end of our time before we jump into Q&A. Can you just quickly hit the rest of what you were going to hit without giving explanation?
Yeah. So that codependent insecure style, just to plant some seeds for these, is really about desperate approval seeking, needing to feel okay with oneself by having money or using money or giving money away. Kind of that avoidant or disengaged style is about masking financial incompetence. I don't want people to know that I'm an imposter, I'm a fraud, I don't really deserve the money that I have. I don't know how I got this, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to manage it. So if I just don't worry about it, I won't have to have these conversations and my incompetence won't ever be revealed. This idea of boundaryless relational financial personality style is about enmeshment and infidelity, kind of these really porous boundaries. And it's about protecting others' feelings, protecting them from having to experience the harsh reality of their decisions. Or we're trying to protect ourselves in some way, rightfully or wrongfully. Again, that exploitative, controlling style is really about control at the very core. That possessive and amassing style, again, I mentioned that there's a scarcity mindset down beneath that. And then shame-based spirituality, again, this lack of self-worth, that the penetrating truths of the gospel somehow don't apply to me, and I'm unworth the love, I'm unworthy of the affection, I'm undeserving of God's blessing in some way.
Dr. Bowman, this stuff is just so awesome. Thank you for dedicating so much of your life and research to things that get down into the nitty-gritty of where we live. It's just awesome. I do want to share with everybody what our exclusive offer is for you. We would love for everyone to participate, both pastors and non-pastors. Our goal is to allow pastors to be in their own unique and exclusive cohort, and then non-pastors to be in their own cohorts. This would be an opportunity for you to grow into your own story. The exclusive opportunity, it begins with next Tuesday, this come 1 week from today, next Tuesday, May 19th at 10 a.m. to noon. So 2 hours, 10 a.m. to noon, we're going to offer a therapeutic discovery. We're going to help you work through your own story. For us, this is a personal discovery experience where your backstory is now not just in theory. This isn't just academics. We began, Dr. Bowman and I, to work into the stories of the people who are a part of it. It's 2 hours. It'll be $49. We are a little bit in flex with it, depending on how many people sign up. We would love to have pastors in their own cohort. We'd love to have others in their own cohort. If we don't have the minimum numbers of that, we will contact everybody and we will reassign a date so that you get exactly what it is that you're going to need in a group setting. So it is a group setting and it's $49. And here's the thing. If you register for this, everybody, if you register for this in the next 24 hours, you also get a free 1 hour Zoom group call with Dr. Bowman and me. 1 hour, Zoom group call. Now, a Zoom group call is anywhere between 10 people and 20 people who will be in a Zoom group processing, and you'll be able to do that separate from the personal discovery experience. And that will be something you get if you sign up and pay your $49 in the next 24 hours. You go to redinkrevival.com and you can follow the links to find out about the personal discovery experience. Also, Camille is posting that right now in your chat box. You can see it, and where the exact link is to go get it. So I want to encourage you to do that. We would love to have everybody in on that. We do retreats for pastors as well. And in these retreats, the pastors who have attended in the past say that it's the greatest. I know this sounds so grandiose, so I'm hesitant to even quote them, but it is true. They will say, not just one or two, the majority, if not everyone, will say, I had a greater experience in God, experiences. I had a greater experience with God in the retreat than I've ever had in my life. I'm talking pastors. Many of them will say, this is the greatest group of friends I've ever developed in my life. I want to offer to you to put your toe in the water. And the way you do that is go to a personal discovery experience next Tuesday that will lead to a 5-hour masterclass the next Tuesday, where we go yet deeper into your stories and flush out for you. Nobody's going to ask you your financial net worth. Nobody's going to ask you your salary. Nobody's going to be digging into your money. What we are going to do is help you see why you do in every area of your life the things that you do, and help you move towards a neurobiological restoration, a wholeheartedness of life. And so we want to encourage you to do that. Also, throughout this webinar, you've heard about our podcast. We drop new content every Thursday. If you'd like to go to our website, you'll see where those podcasts are. They're both video and audio. Also, you're going to want to continue to come back to our website, and we encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter. You'll find out what's happening every month. Every month we have opportunities like this that you're on. We're going to be educating pastors on how to lead their churches in wholeheartedness, and we are building resources so that you can lead your congregations in ways that you never knew could be possible before. The last thing I want to let you know is that this particular webinar has been recorded, and we will make that link available to you for a limited time, and you can go back and rewatch it, and certainly you could even invite other of your friends to see it as well. We would love to give other people the opportunity to jump in to our personal discovery experience as well. So we love that. Dr. Bowman, I so appreciate it. Let's go to Camille. Camille, can you come mic on and tell us of any questions? I know that we may have questions in the general feed. There may be private questions that are in the personal one-on-one with you, but do you have any questions?
Yes, we did have one question come in, and they wanted to know, what is the difference between inordinate generosity and having a giving heart?
Yep, that's a fantastic question. And I think, Patrick and I were actually talking before we got started today about the two sides of the coin, right? So I think that generous heart is one that is rooted in a deep understanding of who God is, a deep transformative experience of grace, and this idea that there's no expectation. It's truly a gift freely given. And I think the difference between that and inordinate generosity is, in inordinate generosity, there's a transactional dimension to it. I'm giving a lot, but I'm expecting something in return. It may not even be something material. Maybe it's a sense of worth. Maybe it's a sense of value. Maybe it's a sense of esteem in the community. Scripturally, I think of the widow with their 2 pennies, and kind of how people are throwing their larger coins, making loud sounds. She kind of silently puts hers in. To me, that's kind of this beautiful depiction of, on one side, this kind of generous giving heart compared against the idea of inordinate generosity. I'm giving something, but it's really about esteem. It's about prestige. It's about being noticed socially. So there's some transaction underneath the giving. rather than a really wholehearted, open-handed, truly free gift that emulates what Christ has given to us. So it's a great question.
Similar to an Ananias and Sapphira scenarios. They saw Barnabas give a bunch. Now I've got to compete. I come in and I don't tell all the truth. And there's exposure there that creates, you know, the end of life story. So yeah, no, that's great. I love that. Is there any others?
Nope, that's it for today.
Awesome, guys. Well, we sure have enjoyed being with all of you. Thank you so much for being on our webinar. This is the first webinar we've done on this, and every month we are looking forward. Next month, we're going to be doing a webinar on driven people and driven leaders. We believe driven people and driven leaders ought to know what they're driven by. We'll do some profiling of that and lead in the same process. To really uncover the energy that drives a person and where it's coming from. And so be sure to sign up for the e-newsletter and you'll be all up to speed on what we're providing. And we're taking you on a journey that that I believe if I had this when I was a young pastor, I would be in a completely different place. Although I'm grateful for the grace that's been on my story, I just want to encourage all of my pastor friends to tell your friends, and let's get the word out for what God could do if somebody just understood this inner working of the heart. And then all of the rest, the church members, man, it's just such an honor that you guys were on. Thank you for supporting the Red Ink Revival with your time and your energy, and would love to go on this journey with you as well. And then all the church staff folks, we're making room for you. We just love it, love it, love it. Todd, is there anything you want to say in departure? And then we'll let everybody go eat, go have lunch.
Yeah, no, I just echo that appreciation. You know, this is never a part of the journey that I thought I was going to be having to explore with financial personality and financial wounds and kind of the deep roots of that. So if this is new to you and it feels a bit uncertain, I just ask you to lean into that discomfort a bit. That I can attest personally that there is a lot of growth that awaits and that God's grace will surely meet you in the midst of this entire process.
So good, man. So good. Well, thank you guys so much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Don't forget, 24 hours, we'd love for you to sign up for our next step in the personal discovery experience. Bless you guys. We're out.